All right. Well, this has been one hell of a day as usual. So I left my place at 3 a.m. this morning. It's now 4:30 in the afternoon, and I just got to the location where I kind of buried 2 cams last year. So I didn't really leave these cameras here intentionally. I left them up while elk hunting with the thought that this was one of my good spots and I was going to be back in here before the season was over. However, I ended up killing in a totally different area, and then there was just no point walking all the way back in here, and I thought it'd be cool to leave them for the year. So they had full batteries in September. Don't know how long they lasted. Maybe they're not even there. Maybe somebody found them, but we're here now. So we're going to rip in there, and fingers crossed, we got some cool ass pictures waiting for us. All right, so moment of truth. There was 2 big wallows just on the other side of this little kind of drainage line. And I know where my cams should be. Now the question is, are they still there? Let's go see. It's amazing how much different shit looks in a completely different season. Like, I recognize everything, but it's definitely a little different. All right, I see one. Hell yeah. Check it out. Still here, baby. All right, here's number 1. I'm gonna take this down and we'll go have a look for number 2. All right, this is Jay jumping in from the future. I'm back home editing this and thought I would throw in my thoughts of the trail cam pics because I didn't have a chance to look at them until I got home. Little disappointed. I would have thought, having been in there for so long, I would have got more mature animals. Literally had 2 5-point elk on the whole thing, a ton of moose, all smaller, immature moose, lots of deer. There were maybe like 3 somewhat decent bucks. The one I put up, that 8-point, was the best by far. I think he definitely shows some potential. But I would have thought I would have saw a lot more elk. There was a ton of deer back there. Only got a handful of cow elk, 2 or 3 bulls. And so I'll pop my head back in there next year for elk season because I've bugled in elk in that spot before. I know other people who have killed elk in that spot before, but it's definitely not the hot spot that I thought it was. So good data anyways. All right, it's the second day of the trip, so maybe I should actually explain what it is I'm doing up here.
So I'm prospecting for whitetails. I don't want to say scouting. I don't want to say like even setting up cams in known spots. There's an area, it's about a 14-hour drive from where I live. Really good animal populations, lots of moose, lots of elk, lots of whitetail. And I've been bouncing all over, kind of chasing whitetail for the last few years. And I decided I wanted to just focus on one location. I know there's some decent whitetail up here. I know this area fairly well compared to a lot of other areas. So I figured, what the hell, let's do a kind of baiting and salt program for whitetails in this particular area. So I left home, drove 14 hours, got in last night, checked those 2 cams you saw me check yesterday. And now exactly what I described earlier, I'm prospecting. So I looked at a bunch of spots on the map, and I'm essentially looking for kind of 3 things: public access, proximity to agriculture, and proximity to water. Ideally trying to find an area where there's water on one side, some kind of ag on another, and I can get access, preferably with a quad. I can't get a quad in here yet. There might be a gate I can get in, I don't know. And then trying to find areas that are predominantly whitetail and aren't absolutely hammered with elk and moose, because they will mess with your baits. Also, trying to stay away from bears, but that's a damn near possibility up here. So this is my first location of the day. I would say I'm giving it like a 5 out of 10. I had to backpack in here. I brought in a 45-pound blue block of salt, and then I still had a Ziploc bag of mineral salt left from my program last year, so I brought that in here as well. Ideally, I'm going to be setting up a lot more salt when I find the really good spots, especially if I can get a quad in. But for now, this is it. So yeah, first spot, I'm going to try and find 4 or 5 spots like this today. Just get cams up, get some salt out, and then, come back in 4 to 6 weeks and probably try and set up another 4 or 5. If I could have 10 spots being prospected by mid-June, let those sit over the summer, come back late August, early September, see which ones are producing, and then kind of, add some more salt and then start baiting maybe early to mid-October with some hay, come back and hunt in November. That's essentially the game plan. So first spot's done, gonna hike back to the truck, head to a new spot. All right, so second salt and cam is set. You can see it just behind me. The other thing that I forgot to mention last time that I'm keeping in mind when I get to these locations is, where can I set up? Like, I'm gonna use a combination of tree stands and ground blinds depending on what the timber is like. And there's like 2 great spruce trees here. They're maybe like a little close, but the timber in this stand is like pretty mature. There's lots of like bigger diameter trees that I'm gonna feel comfortable in. And there's some great spots to tuck in a ground blind. So I forgot to mention that at the first site. So not so great if you're setting baits and cams and you get lots of traffic and then you go to hunt it and it's like, well, now where am I supposed to set up? So I'm trying to keep that in the back of my mind when I get to all these potential locations. All right, we made it to setup number 3. So here's the typical salt setup that I'm using. I got 1 blue block, 1 mineral block, and then a bag of blue salt. There's the camera right there. Tried to get it up a little higher and then point it down. Here, just to give you an idea of how far apart. There's basically an old trail going up there, another one going up here, and that's the same one that goes around there. So I'm basically at an X intersection of what were probably seismic lines, I'm assuming. They could have been doing some mining exploration as well. They're super old. This is not the most ideal spot, but I'm in this kind of like big chunk of crown here, and I wanted to put a cam here, and the timber is so dense. This is the best I got. At the very least, the timber's a bit too small to set up a tree stand, but I could have a ground blind maybe 35 yards over there and still get a shot here. This is really more of like a test spot Is there, you know, a decent density of game here? If there is, when I come back and I have more time, I could look through this parcel more thoroughly and try and find a better spot. But for now, this'll do. So that's setup number 3. If we bust ass, I think we might be able to squeeze in 2 more today. All right, we're losing daylight, so I'm gonna do this quick. I'm super excited about this spot. There's 2 great trees for tree stands. I'm at the intersection of multiple game trails and multiple old cleared trails. So there's like better sight lines in here than any of the other spots I've found so far. Good mix of deciduous, so a little bit more sunlight, a little bit more visibility. Quick look at the setup. Salt as per usual. Game cam as per usual. And yeah, that's it. I'm gonna bomb back out to the truck. It's getting late fast, but I'm gonna see if I can squeeze in one more spot before I go. All right, we made it to a 5th spot. Here's the camera. There's the salt there. Yeah, this is a maybe more elky than whitetail spot, but hey man, I'm never gonna turn down another elk spot. So yeah, it looks bright, but the sun is just about to go down. It's 6 p.m. I'm gonna make my way back to the truck now. Maybe got time for one more spot, but I doubt it. All right, there we go. 5 spots, done and dusted. All right, folks, there you have it. Another scouting mission in the books. Now, before we get into the final thoughts and takeaways from this trip, I want to remind you, this video goes live the morning of Monday, April the 15th. That means you have 2 days left to enter the bear hunt giveaway. It ends at 11:59 p.m. Tuesday, April 16th. Every $5 you spend on apparel at forageinthebackcountry.com will get you 1 entry to win a guided black bear hunt in British Columbia. I will accompany you on that hunt, I will film that hunt, and I will upload that film to the Mindful Hunter YouTube channel. So head on over to Foraged, pick up some apparel, enter for your chance to win a kick-ass hunt. It's gonna be a great time. Okay, so final thoughts and takeaways. Now, on my last video, I asked everybody what they wanted me to kind of share or give some tips and tactics about moving forward on this vlog series. And the 2 most common things I got asked about were finances and family management. Now, before I get into that, I want to give you the context of what just took place over the last 3 days, because I'm under the impression people think there's kind of like a financial magic bullet or a family management magic bullet that's just going to open up all this free time in your life. And that's not the way it happens. Okay, I left at 3 a.m. Thursday morning. I'm going to get back to Vancouver at 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Now, during the course of that time, I drove over 40 hours. I spent 12 hours in the bush to set up 6 cameras with anywhere between 100 and 200 pounds of salt at each one. And I only slept 13 hours over the course of 3 days. Now, I'm not trying to be some Billy badass, but I'm saying if you really want to increase your likelihood of success this year, what you need to be willing to do is what other people aren't willing to do. So push yourself further, work harder, do more. I know it's cliche as hell, but that's the fact of the matter. If you really want to be great at something, you got to be willing to do what everyone else isn't. And this phrase keeps going over in my mind, undeniable. There's this thing in bodybuilding that, you know, people tend to complain about placings because it's a very subjective sport. And the true heads will tell you you need to be undeniable. You need to leave no room for doubt in the judges' minds. And so that's the attitude that I'm approaching this year with. I want to be so insanely prepared that my success this year is undeniable. Like there is no excuse, there's no reason, there's no thing that could happen out of my control that will derail me. I'm going to be that insanely prepared for the season. Now, that being said, I do think there are things you can do at home and with your money to help facilitate more time away. I'll do a podcast about this and get into more details, but I want to throw a couple tips in here. Number one, involve your family in the decision-making process. I knew I needed 3 days with how far away it was and how much time I needed in order to actually get out there and be efficient and get a decent number of setups out in the field. I needed 3 days. So I went to my wife and said, listen, here's a 2-week period. I need 3 days. You tell me what 3 days works best for you. And then I took that to my kid and I said, these are the 3 days I'm going to be gone. What are some things we can do before I leave and some things I can do when we get back so that this is as minimally disruptive for you as possible. By involving people in the decision-making process, they're going to buy into it a lot more, and they're going to be a lot less resentful about you leaving. Now, as far as the financial part goes, try and organize trips that are as cheap as possible in the preseason. So you don't have to buy any major pieces of gear. Literally, my only expenses on this trip were food and gas. I already had trail cameras. I already had the gear that I need. I already had the quad. So when you start building your hunting toolkit, think of it like that. Think of each piece as an investment so that when you actually finally get time, it's more of a challenge to find the time than it is to find the resources. Because if you do the legwork and you get the time, but then you don't actually have the money to buy the gear you need to get on the field, it's a bit of a failure. So build up your arsenal of hunting equipment so that you get to the point where the only thing you actually need to spend when you go hunting is food and gas, and it'll make it a lot easier. Plus, it makes it a lot easier to discuss that with your wife, because it's not like saying, hey, I need to take off for 3 days and I'm going to drop $2,000 because I need a new tent because where I'm going scouting, whatever the case may be. It's like the money isn't part of the conversation. It's just time that's a part of the conversation. Okay, moving forward, what's the game plan? I'm leaving for vacation for 2 weeks on Monday. As soon as I get back, it's right back into scheduled programming. I'm going to try and scout a minimum of 1 day per week. So I have a blacktail day that's closer to home, and then I have a mule deer day a little bit further from home. Hopefully the snow will be melted up there by the time I get up there. As usual, if there's anything specific you want to see in those videos, drop it in the comments section below. If you can engage with this content in any way, shape, or form, it's greatly appreciated. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Remember, 2 days left for the forageinthebackcountry.com bear hunt giveaway. And as always, thank you for tuning in.